The Lighthouse Keeper, and the Winter Sea. On the eastern coast of Nova Scotia, where the Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, there stood a lighthouse that had been watching over the sea for more than 100 years. It was not a famous lighthouse. Tourists rarely visited. Its picture did not appear on postcards. Most maps marked it with only a small dot and a name, Harbor Point Lighthouse. But for Thomas Bennett, it was home. Thomas was 64 years old. He had lived beside the lighthouse for nearly half his life. Every morning, regardless of the weather, he woke at 6 o'clock. Not because he had to, because after so many years, his body simply knew. He would put water on the stove, grind coffee beans by hand, and stand by the kitchen window while waiting for the kettle to boil. In winter, the world outside was usually blue and grey. The ocean rolled endlessly beneath the clouds. Seabirds drifted over the waves. And the lighthouse, painted white decades ago, stood quietly against the wind. Thomas liked winter. Most people assumed he would prefer summer. After all, summer brought warm days, visitors, and easier weather. But Thomas had always believed that winter revealed the true personality of a place. In winter, there were no distractions, only the sea, the sky, and time itself. On one particular evening in January, snow had begun falling just before sunset. Not heavy snow, just enough to soften the edges of the world. Thomas wrapped himself in a wool sweater and climbed the narrow spiral staircase to the top of the lighthouse. He had climbed those stairs thousands of times. Even now, he still counted them, 92 steps. Always 92. At the top, he checked the light. The beam swept across the darkening ocean. Once, twice, again. Satisfied, he stepped outside onto the narrow observation deck. The wind was cold, very cold. But Thomas stayed anyway. Far below, waves crashed gently against the rocks. Snowflakes drifted through the lighthouse beam, appearing for only a second before disappearing back into darkness. He loved this moment, the moment when day became night, the moment when the world became quiet. After a while, he returned downstairs and prepared dinner. Nothing complicated. A bowl of seafood chowder, fresh bread, and tea. He ate at the small wooden table beside the window. Outside, the snow continued falling. The radio played softly in the background. A weather report, some jazz music, a host wishing listeners a good evening. Then silence again. After dinner, Thomas opened a book. He had been reading the same book for nearly 3 weeks. Not because it was difficult, because he saw no reason to rush through it. He read 10 pages. Then he stopped. The ocean sounded particularly peaceful tonight. He set the book down and listened. Wind, waves, silence. Years ago, when Thomas had first moved to Harbour Point, he had worried about loneliness. His friends in the city had worried too. What will you do out there all alone? They had asked. At the time, he had not known the answer. But eventually, he discovered something important. Being alone and being lonely were not the same thing. The ocean kept him company. The changing weather kept him company. The birds, the stars, the seasons, even the lighthouse itself. There was always something quietly happening. You just had to slow down enough to notice it. Around 9 o'clock, the snow stopped. Thomas put on his coat and stepped outside. The sky had cleared. Above him stretched more stars than he could count. The air felt impossibly clean. The ocean reflected the moonlight like polished glass. He walked carefully along the path toward the cliffs. He had made this walk thousands of times, yet every night felt slightly different. Tonight, the world seemed suspended, as if time itself had decided to rest for a while. He reached his favorite spot overlooking the sea. There, he sat on an old wooden bench facing the horizon, and he waited, not for anything specific, just because waiting had become one of his favorite activities. After a few minutes, he saw them. 3 seals surfaced near the rocks. They floated quietly in the moonlight. One looked directly toward him. Thomas smiled. "Good evening," he said softly. The seal disappeared beneath the water. Then another surfaced farther away. He laughed quietly to himself. There was no one there to hear him, and somehow that made the moment even better. Eventually, the cold persuaded him to return inside. He made one last cup of tea. Chamomile, his favorite before bed. Then he sat by the window and watched the lighthouse beam sweep across the ocean. Once, twice, again, he thought about all the ships that had passed through these waters, all the storms, all the winters, all the people who had looked toward this light and felt a little safer. He wondered how many of them were sleeping now, how many were still awake, how many were looking out at the same moon. The tea grew colder. The fire burned lower. Midnight arrived quietly. Thomas stood. He checked the locks, turned off the kitchen light, and climbed the stairs to his bedroom. Before going to bed, he opened the curtains one final time. The lighthouse beam continued turning. The ocean continued breathing. The stars continued shining. The world, he realized, was doing exactly what it had always done. And there was something deeply comforting about that. He climbed into bed, pulled the blanket over his shoulders, and listened to the wind, to the sea, to the lighthouse, to the beautiful sound of nothing needing to happen. Outside, Harbour Point Lighthouse kept watch over the winter sea, and inside, Thomas drifted slowly, peacefully, into sleep.